people that are just starting out in the industry, obviously you've been through, bachelor's degree and the sort of process of interning and getting involved with footy clubs or other sporting codes. Obviously now would be a pretty difficult time. What advice would you have for people that are trying to crack it into the industry at the moment?
Yeah, I think obviously tuning into this podcast and website would be a good start. It's all about doing your research too, isn't it? So, getting in there and actually understand. It's one thing to say that you want to get into high performance sport, but it's another thing to understand what opportunities there are within the sport.
Yeah.
And then how are you going to crack into it? What skills do you need? So for me, it'd be about doing your research in those areas and understanding what you need to get into the industry, and how are you going to be able to sustain it going forward. So just because the skills might be relevant now, you probably need to get an understanding of the landscape and how it's going to develop going forward. Something like AI, how's that going to impact us as performance analysts going forward? Those kind of considerations you need to make as well.
Right. And I've been using, I mentioned to you before that sort of professionally for the last 5 years, I've recruited for data science and analytics professionals. So I'm not a technical person myself, but I've got a good understanding of the sort of layout of that industry. We were just talking about doing your research and figuring out what opportunities would be out there. So I think in terms of, sports science, that side of things, I guess it's more well known than the world of data and analytics within sport. And I've spoken to a couple of people at the AFL and Cricket Australia and some of the league clubs and expanding my networks. But what I've sort of widely heard just in the last couple of weeks is that most clubs will either have no data analysts or maybe one. From your understanding of the areas of the industry that you've been exposed to, would that be right? Like, it's a relatively new space and people will probably most likely only have one analyst at most.
Yeah, I think different sports will have different, and different clubs will have different approaches that they take towards data at the moment. And during my time at SACA, the Cricket Australia system really took some leaps and bounds forward in terms of, I guess, what the requirements of the role of the analyst was. And how that's changing. I think universities are doing a really good job now in terms of providing those skills that they can become the master of all trades. I think the old-fashioned analyst, becomes a bit of a coding monkey, if I'm honest, in terms of cutting up a lot of vision, doing a lot of manual work in Excel, and those times have changed, and obviously you need more skills to get through it. So I think in terms of your hardcore data scientists, there's limited roles there at the moment in those bigger organisations.
Yeah.
But then there's still clubs like AFL clubs that are investing heavily in their data analytics areas, and that sort of comes back to how it's sort of driven from the top as well. So
Right.
I think it'll definitely vary amongst different sports.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to check out more of our content, go to sporttechdaily.com or follow us on social media across Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram.